because when this comes to an end in the next year or two, it's going to be a lot of pain. But Elijah, a lot of people came out of the 30s, not a lot, but many people came out of the 30s rich. Many lost everything. So if you are knowledgeable and cautious and careful, you might come out of all this very, very rich. Silver coin, first of all, everybody should have some silver coins, because if it really gets crazy and chaotic, you need something to go down to the grocery store.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with the Miles Franklin Market Update. And with us today is extremely successful investor, best-selling author, and also Guinness Book World Record holder, Jim Rogers. Mr. Rogers, thank you so much for joining us today.
I am delighted to be here, Mr. Johnson.
Since the last time we've spoken, a lot of things have changed in the economy and in politics. And I wanted to first address the political situation here in the U.S. We have a new administration. Joe Biden has obviously become president. And we also see that the Democrats have taken the Senate, which was a little bit unexpected. How does this impact the U.S. fiscal situation going forward?
Well, everybody around Mr. Biden loves to spend money and borrow money and print money. And now he's got a Congress which will probably go along with it. So I thought it was almost impossible to print more money. I thought the world had run out of trees. They've printing so much. But now we'll see more money printing, more spending, more borrowing. Elijah, it's a good time to be old in America because we reap the benefits. But it's a bad time to be young in America because you're going to have to pay for it, and you're going to have huge, huge burdens going forward, which you're all going to say someday, wait a minute, where'd all this debt come from? And it's not going to be fun. Other countries, this has happened throughout history, always happened. In the 1920s, Britain was the richest, most powerful country in the world. There was no number two. And they spent a lot of money, went in debt. 50 years later, only 50 years later, totally bankrupt. IMF had to fly into London airport and bail them out. They went from far and away the number one to totally bankrupt in 50 years. So you'll probably be around in 50 years, Elijah. It doesn't look good for young Americans.
No, with respect to that, kind of all the debt you said that it looks like we're going to have because of the Biden administration, and a lot of the people around him obviously like to spend money. It looks like we're going to have more stimulus coming. What is your perspective on the U.S., the response we've seen to the COVID pandemic? We've seen a lot of stimulus, and it seems like with Biden, we're even going to see more stimulus and more spending.
As I said, it's great for old people. We get the benefits. All Americans get the benefit, young and old. The old people get the benefits, but the old people aren't going to be around in 50 years to have to worry about all of this. No, things are better for many people in the U.S. I mean, if you suddenly get a check, it's wonderful. And you're going to get more checks, apparently, and there's going to be more spending. As I said, it's great for old people. It's not good for young people. It's not good for the future of America. Not at all good for the future of America. I'm an American. I have children. I worry about my children. I mean, nobody in D.C. cares about my children. Nobody in D.C. cares about you. They care about elections. They don't care about any American citizen. They just want to get elected. So they're not worried about your future or my kids' future.
One of the things that I've found interesting is that obviously in these times of crisis, the solution seems to be stimulus and more printing. But at the end of the day, does that actually solve the underlying issues?
No, of course not. It adds to the woes, as I told you. It's great for right now. It's great for 2 or 3 years. There's no question about that. But the U.S. is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and the debts are going through the roof, hand over fist. This does not help the underlying problems of too much debt, too much inefficiency. America is not competitive anymore the way it used to be. That's partly because we have gigantic healthcare costs like no other country in the world. You know, it's horrendous, our healthcare costs compared to other countries. Education, we spend huge amounts on education, but our kids are not even in the top 20. No, the underlying problems are still there and getting worse. You know, if you go to Asia, it's just not. I live in Asia now. My kids go to local schools. It's staggering. I mean, I can't believe the amount of homework and the advanced level of their education. I mean, I just cannot believe it. My kids have more homework in 1 year than I had in 12 in local schools. And I went to good schools where they actually had good teachers and discipline. It's no question that America has problems, but this is not solving them.
Now, with respect to the COVID vaccine as a possible solution to the current crisis we're in, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, sure, I want everybody to get vaccinated and everybody to survive. We all do. You know, the polio vaccine came along and it was a miracle. And everybody took it, and we're all pleased. And likewise with this vaccine. I hope that it works. I hope that we all get it, and I hope that the pandemic goes away. Certainly be better for the world economy if we can all eat and drink instead of sitting home locked up.
Do you think it will improve the economy, though? Because obviously from the pandemic, we've seen a huge economic downturn. Do you think the vaccine will actually help us get back to where we were before?
Well, if the vaccine works, yes, then people will be able to travel and go out and about and do things that they cannot do right now. Yeah, I presume it works. I have no way of knowing. I'm not a scientist or a doctor. But if we assume it works, it's going to make things better for all of us or give us freedom to do things we cannot do now.
Now, you've talked about in the past and actually on a previous interview how essentially in this COVID pandemic and in crises in the past, there can be depressed sectors in the economy. And those are opportunities. So in this current pandemic, did you want to share with our viewers right now, where are some sectors that you see that are depressed that might be actually opportunities to invest in?
Well, I live in Singapore, and 6 months ago, the airport was basically closed. Now that's open. There are few flights. So if you go from no flights to 100, things look great. Used to be thousands, so it is getting better, but it's not what it was before. And that's happening in much of the world. Likewise, restaurants, bars, hotels, anything to do with travel or transportation. About Chinese wine companies, because nobody went to the bars, nobody went to the restaurants, but now they're going again. And I hope they drink wine. I hope they drink Chinese wine. So things like that, Russian shipping, it's amazing. The shipping industry is booming and rates are going through the roof. I didn't know that when I bought the Russian shipping companies. I knew that they were depressed and there were problems. But now, for goodness sakes, it's booming because there's shortages. So there are opportunities. I hope there are opportunities.
Now, it's interesting because this whole COVID situation has really changed the way a lot of us live. And it might be that in a lot of circumstances, it's changed things permanently. For example, a lot of people are working from home now, and that might be the case for the future. Do you see any ways that really COVID has changed the financial system permanently, where there might be some depressed sectors, but we should probably stay away from those because they won't recover?
Well, whenever there's a crisis, it accelerates trends that are already in place. You and I could have education over the computer 5 years ago, but now that process has accelerated. One of my daughters is home from boarding school, and she in England. I mean, she's having classes every day. She's in Singapore, they're in England, but it's all over the computer, and that is going to accelerate now. Likewise, medical care. You don't have to always go to the doctor. You can say to the doctor, you see this spot here? What is this? What is this? And he probably can figure it out, I help you, over the computer now. Well, home delivery, I don't have to tell you about that. It's all getting more common and more used everywhere in the world now. So there are many things that are accelerating. Things like offices. I mean, I read that in New York, for instance, there are a lot of empty offices now. a lot of empty buildings. I'm not there, so I don't know. But things like that, obviously, you point out. We don't have to go to the office anymore, or even if we do, there may be fewer of us going to the office. There are other ways to do things now, and they will come to the future.
Now, one of the things also that this pandemic has accelerated is a trend that you've noted many times in the past, how China is growing and actually growing faster. The economy is growing faster than the U.S. economy. The Center for Economic and Business Research, a UK-based firm, actually projected that the Chinese economy would overtake the U.S. in 2028. And also, actually right now, the BBC also reported that China overtook the U.S. as the #1 place for foreigners to invest. So what is your take on how it seems like with the pandemic, that trend of China's economy overtaking the U.S. has accelerated?
Yes, I mean, you pointed out, that's why I'm here. I moved to Asia so that my children would grow up knowing Asia and speaking Mandarin. Because whether we like it or not, 21st century is the century of China. I mean, I'm an American. I don't like that, but so what? I can't have to deal with it. I have to live. I cannot live my life and my investments for what I wish. I'll go bankrupt if I invest in what I wish instead of what is happening. Yes, it is happening, whether we like it or not. China, by the way, is the only country in history that's had 3 or 4 periods of greatness. They've been the #1 country in the world 3 or 4 times. They've collapsed, had catastrophe 3 or 4 times. But for whatever reason, after a few decades or a few centuries, in this case centuries, China's risen to the top again. Well, it's happening again. And so I want my children to be prepared for it. Now, Elijah, they will not be the #1 economy per capita in 2028. I mean, there are 1,400,000,000 of them. But there's certainly, if you go there, you will see. I've been going there for over 35 years. Every time I go, I'm shocked. It's a different country. It's growing very, very fast. They have debt now. They didn't have debt before. Nobody would lend money to the communists, but now they have debt. No, it's dramatic. Do I like it? Well, I don't like that America's not booming, but there's always some country rising. That's happened every century for thousands of years. One has to accept reality.
And in your opinion, why do you think China was not hit as hard economically from the pandemic?
Well, they say, and I have no way of knowing, they say that they were prepared for it. They had a big epidemic, a couple of epidemics in the past 20 years or so, and they say they were prepared. They had all these procedures in place for when they had SARS. You may remember SARS several years ago, and they say that they had all these procedures in place, so they were ready. They had tests, they had equipment, and they had lockdowns. And I don't know if they're correct or not, but I know that I certainly know when I go on the internet, I see that China's bustling. The streets are full of people, the restaurants are full of people, the shops are full of people. And that happened pretty quickly. So, I mean, they have recurring problems, of course, everybody does. But I guess that's the only answer I know why they have suffered less than the rest of us. I mean, in the U.S., Elijah, 2 months into it, we didn't even have tests. Nobody even knew if you had the pandemic. Washington, we didn't even have tests in March so that people would know whether they had it or not. I remember all of a sudden Washington said, we got to get tests, and they started cranking up. Well, that was 2 or 3 months later, much less respirators and everything else that you need for a panic like this. So I certainly know we weren't prepared, or we didn't take action. Whether what they say is accurate or not, I don't know. But I certainly know that I can see from the evidence that they're less badly affected.
Now, I asked viewers to submit some questions, and we have a couple for you here, kind of on this topic of the economy in China growing faster than the U.S. Kind of moving then to the value of the dollar. How will this impact the dollar? This viewer is wanting to know, what is your perspective on the recent yield curve steepening, and do you see the dollar rising in the first half of 2021?
Well, I own U.S. dollars. I should probably ask you and your company about the first half of 2021. Um, I own U.S. dollars. I own them. I mean, the U.S. is the largest debtor nation in world history, and it's getting worse. So you're probably going to say, well, why do you own U.S. dollars? I own them because there's going to be more problems in the next couple of years, and people always look for a safe haven in times of turmoil. And many people think the U.S. dollar is a safe haven. It's certainly not going to buy the pound or the euro or something like that. So that's why I own it. The first 6 months, I don't know. I would suspect there's going to be a rally sometime here in the first 6 months. The dollar's down. It's been correcting for several weeks now. So, but Elijah, I'm the world's worst market timer. I'm the worst trader in the world. I would suspect there's going to be a rally soon, but don't ask me.
This viewer is wanting to know about your perspective on another safe haven asset, gold. Now, they're wanting to know, at what price would you increase your position in gold?
Well, I own gold, yes, and I own silver. I haven't been buying them for some time now. They got very, very hot there for a while, and there is a correction. Again, I don't know, but I will be buying more gold and more silver sometime in the next few weeks, few months. The problem is there's still a lot of bulls on both. I will buy more silver than gold. Silver's down 50% from its all-time high. Gold is down 10% from its all-time high. So I will certainly be buying more silver than gold. I don't have a price. It will depend on conditions. I try to sense the mood of the market, and when people are giving up or are starting to get bearish, right now everybody's bullish. If you look at the traders' commitments on the futures markets, there's still a lot of bulls. So I'm waiting to see a lot of bears. And then hopefully I'll be smart enough to buy more of both, because before this is over, the gold and silver are going to go very, very high, because whenever there are problems and people lose confidence in government and in paper money, throughout history, they bought gold and silver. Elijah, I'm an old peasant, and us old peasants know we need some money in the closet. We need some money under the bed, gold money, silver money under the bed. Politicians will say, and academics will say, you don't need gold and silver. Well, okay, let them say that. But us old peasants are always going to have some gold and silver for bad times.
This viewer is wanting to know specifically about investing in silver and your thoughts about the diverse ways you can invest in silver. You can buy the physical metal, the mining stocks, ETFs. What is your perspective, and what do you do when you invest in silver?
Well, here's one right here. It's a silver coin. First of all, everybody should have some silver coins, because if it really gets crazy and chaotic, you need something to go down to the grocery store and buy yourself some bread and beans. So I certainly own silver and gold coins. You can buy depending on how much you know and what your expertise is, you can buy futures, you can buy mines. If you know a gold miner which is going to find a gold mine in Berlin, you buy all you can, and then you send me an email. I want to know about it too. Mark Twain once said, a gold mine is a hole in the ground with a liar standing at the top. So there are hundreds of gold mines and silver. You need to know what you're doing, and if you do, you'll make a fortune. If you don't, you'll be like Mark Twain. Mark Twain lost a lot of money in a gold mine. It was a hole in the ground. So you have to know what you're so mines, futures, solid real metal, gold bars in a vault, coins in your pocket. There are various ways. I certainly have coins. I invest in futures. The ways I don't have any gold mines, I don't think at the moment, but I have in the past.
And a few viewers are actually wanting to know about your perspective on farmland and agriculture and ways to invest in those if you believe that those are a good play right now.
Well, if you know what you're doing, buy farmland. The best thing to do is become a farmer. You get very, very, very rich. Elijah, more people in the U.S. study public relations than study agriculture now. I mean, we got a shortage of farmers. The average age of farmers in America is 58 or 59 years old. The highest rate of suicide in the UK is agriculture. So there are going to be huge opportunities in agriculture. I mean, I'm not buying a farm and becoming a farmer because I wouldn't be any good at it. But if you could, then do it. Or you can buy. I bought the index on the New York Stock Exchange, RJA. I mean, in fact, I'll be buying more soon. It's called the Rogers Agricultural Index. That, for me, is a very good way. Many studies have proven that index investing is better for most people than trying to do it yourself. But Elijah, if you know that sugar is about to go through the roof, you should buy sugar futures. I'm too lazy to do that at the moment. So I buy RJA.
All right. Well, Jim Rogers, we really appreciate your time and all of your insights that you give our viewers. Any last thoughts before we let you go? What would you like to leave with our viewers?
Well, Elijah, I can see at the moment the bubble starting to develop in the financial world. I'm not short, I'm not selling, and it's not a complete bubble. There's still many stocks in the U.S. and China and Japan and the rest of the world that are not in a bubble yet, but I can see bubbles developing. I mean, you go to Seoul, there are all these kids rushing into the stock market who've never invested before, know little about it, but that's true in Japan and China, America. There are many signs that a bubble is beginning to develop, so please be very, very careful. And again, my timing's bad. Maybe the bubble is here right now. Maybe this is the last week of the bubble. I don't think so, because I do see it developing though, and so everybody should be worried and knowledgeable, because all bubbles end very, very badly, and many people suffer a great deal. As I look around the world, the U.S. stock market is near all-time highs. Bonds are clearly a bubble. Bonds have never been this expensive in the history of the world. Property in many places, Seoul, London, many places, property is turning into a bubble. Many internet stocks, Amazon goes up every day. Tencent never goes down. Samsung always goes up. Some of these stocks are turning into bubbles. The only asset class I see that's not a bubble is commodities. Commodities are still depressed. Sugar's down 80% from its all-time high. Silver's down 50% from its all-time high. So the basic point is there are very few cheap assets anymore. Some assets are turning into bubbles. Some are already there, such as bonds and property in some cities. So be very, very careful, because when this comes to an end in the next year or two, it's going to be a lot of pain. But, Elijah, a lot of people came out of the 30s, not a lot, but many people came out of the 30s rich. Many lost everything. So if you are knowledgeable and cautious and careful, you might come out of all this very, very rich. I hope I survive, much less get rich.
And that's what we're here for, to help people hopefully do that. And we really appreciate your insights, Mr. Jim Rogers.
Hooray. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Bye-bye.